Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I am your host, Samuel. And today we have with us a very unique guest. His name is Mark Metry. And what's unique about Mark is he does not come from medical sales. He was never in sales, actually. He is actually a social anxiety expert. So, of course, you're asking the question, well, Samuel, why are you doing an episode on social anxiety? So social anxiety is actually something that's a lot more prevalent in sales than people realize. And sales consists of all types of people, especially introverts and extroverts. And I think that when people hear the word sales rep or sales professional, or even sales leader, they think, okay, that has to be the ultimate extrovert. But what a lot of people don't realize is that quite a few introverts are actually sales reps. And social anxiety plays a role with some of those introverts. But it also plays a role with some of those extroverts. And you might experience something, even you that's listening right now, in the field or with your team or as a leader, and you're not sure what it is, but it's getting in the way of your consistent performance, of you being able to deliver consistent performance. And it might be social anxiety. But the thing about it is people don't recognize it unless you're trained, and people don't understand how insidious it can be in your performance. But we're lucky to have someone that does, and his name is Mark Metry, and that's what we're going to get into today. So as always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, how you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing excellent, man. How about you?
I am fantastic. Well, I'm so glad you can join us today. You know what? This is going to be a little bit of a different episode, so I'm going to let everybody right off the bat tell people what you do and who you are and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a author, podcaster, coach, advisor. I do a lot of things, but really it's centered around mental wellness, helping people with anxiety, social anxiety, helping people that feel like they're super shy or they're nervous or they can never be themselves in front of people. How do you comfortably do that and sort of address the root cause? So I kind of help leaders and companies and schools and organizations deal with this fact that, a lot of people don't, unless you have this issue, it's sort of like an invisible issue.
Right. No, it's real. And even the mental health space, it's kind of coming more to the forefront these days, more than I've seen ever. So let me ask you this, you actually train sales teams as well.
Correct.
What do you specifically train them on?
So basically, I thinking about towards the end of 2019, I got invited to go to this conference, and I believe it was a sales conference. And I basically go there and I start talking with people, and I talk with everyone at the conference. And basically, I talk to this person. He tells me there are all these companies and there's all these companies that have all these sales teams and they have these trainings on how to train people on how to go through a script and how to do sales. But then he basically goes on and tells me, he's like, a lot of these people who have trouble dealing with that pressure, like that social pressure to either perform or when you're actually in the sales call, a lot of them are on drugs. A lot of them have all these different kinds of addictions that they use to sort of cope and to deal with stress. And so I remember ever since I kind of learned that and I heard that, I started to get invited by, a few different CEOs, heads of sales. And basically they would tell me like, hey, Mark, we have like maybe a handful of people on our team who are more on the introverted side, or maybe they don't even really look like introverts, but they still kind of have social anxiety deep down where they hop on a sales call and sort of immediately their mind goes blank. So then they sort of stick to the script, or they, just start sweating like profusely, or they get a headache, or after work, they get a little too drunk. And so basically it's like, sales is a very difficult job. And so companies bring in people like me for their individual, people on the team, their individual sort of well-being. And then also those who face social anxiety where, yeah, they can sort of still do their job, but it also kind of feels like they have like, a mountain sitting on top of their shoulders filled with pressure, which then makes them either not really perform as well or makes them sort of not really be themselves and just sort of, stick to the script. And then a lot of times clients and prospects can sort of see through that. And then it sort of creates this vibe of like very low confidence when really it's like it has nothing to do with the product. It's just the person, and so a lot of people who get into sales, a lot of them don't have, social anxiety or are shy because it's not necessarily the best career path, at least to the untrained mind. And so, yeah, that's where a lot of my work revolves around, if that makes sense.
I think there's more to that though, and you kind of nailed it. The assumption is that if you're in sales, you're an extrovert and you're out there and you're able to, the gift to gab, and you can talk and you can get with anyone. But I really think that there's a lot more introverts in sales than people realize. And to your point, those people can be as equally effective as any extrovert if they can get in front of whatever social anxieties they may have. And let me ask you this, would you say that you can start out as this, big, confident extrovert, but if you're not performing so well, you can start to develop some social anxieties? Is that a reality? Something you see?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the way that I kind of think about it and begin this conversation is like there's sort of two kinds of people, broadly speaking, in this category. There is person number one who, when they were a kid, they were always kind of super shy. Even when they become adults, they're still shy, which is social anxiety. But then there's sort of a second kind of a person where maybe they were shy for like a very short period of time, but not really as a kid. And they've just sort of tried to figure things out as they go. And they sort of have like a general kind of sense of anxiety in regards to, external factors similar to what you said of like, if there's something going on between their relationships or at work, or their boss, if they have like some sort of a toxic boss, or they're in a career field where they're not passionate about it and they kind of need to go through like a personal transformation and figure out what their passion and purpose is, then there can definitely be sort of some sort of general social anxiety that may arise. But generally speaking, people in that first category, that's really where sort of the I don't want to say more serious issues because they're different issues, but there's sort of those two sides. So yeah, it's definitely possible for sure.
Sure. So what I've seen, and this is, so now we're talking about medical sales. This is the Medical Sales Podcast. Most of our listeners are in medical sales, or they're professionals in another sales space or a different space altogether that want to be in medical sales. And, I train a lot of medical sales reps, and what I've seen is that there are quite a few that, because of their performance or because of their boss or because of a relationship, they really aren't showing up the way they want to, and they don't know what to do about it. Some of them think, maybe this is not the career for me anymore, but I love what I'm doing, but for some reason I just can't get out there. Or some of them say, lately I just fall apart in the sales call and I don't know where to go and I don't know what to do and I can't think and I'm not sure what's going on. So I know that you deal with getting to the root cause of where that could be coming from for anyone. And then also there are people that want to get into this field that could be very effective, but they do have that social anxiety and they don't know what to do about it. And they really want to get around it. They really want to change it, but it's kind of stopping them in their tracks. So I want you to go ahead and talk a little bit about, what can people do for the first person I brought up and the second person to get in front of this thing, get out there and be their best selves.
Yeah, definitely. So, personally for me, I always try to approach this conversation from like a neuroscience perspective, and not to complicate anything. Basically, what I mean is this: so there is literally a part of your brain that has evolved over the course of thousands of years to basically try to predict where you are in what they call sort of the social hierarchy of society, of like sort of like in ancient civilizations, like maybe you learned about it in school, where like the king is at the top, and then like the high priests are here, and then like the servants are down here.
Right.
So that's also like literally there's a part of your brain at a neurobiological level that has evolved to try to detect and guess where you are in the social hierarchy. And so, yeah, if you are not getting great results, if you are not performing as well as other people, then for some people, I'm sure, basically what begins to happen is this same part of your brain then controls your mood. It also controls like your vision. It controls your appetite. It also controls your sleep. And so obviously it's very complex, but in a very simple level, we all have this in our brains. And so, yeah, it makes complete sense that if someone who doesn't even have, sort of long-term social anxiety, they can still sort of start to feel these effects. And so for someone who does have social anxiety and, they're trying to hop on sales calls and they're saying, my mind is going blank, I don't know how to think, how do I get in front of this? How do I look at the root cause? There's really a wide variety of places where people can start. But really, I think the biggest one is really your sense of identity. And basically what I mean by that is a lot of us, from the moment we wake up, we just sort of wake up and we just jump into the day. And a lot of us don't really get a chance to sort of create our identity. And what I'm talking about here is a lot of the times people who are very shy, people who have social anxiety, a lot of times, if you can trace it back, what you'll realize is in their past, throughout their entire lives, people have always said like, oh, you're shy, or like, oh, you're the shy person, or, oh, you're quiet, or, oh, you're an introvert. And a lot of the times people with social anxiety, in their heads, they're not shy. In their heads, they're not introverted. They are who they are, but there's sort of this external barrier. There's like sort of an external layer. And so a lot of that has to do with your sense of identity. It has to do with basically you're letting other people choose who you are. You're letting other people define who you are. So then what happens is you hop on a sales call, you go to the store, you go wherever, you hop on a meeting. And basically what happens is there's a part of your identity that's trying to figure out, who am I going to be in front of this person? And so people with social anxiety throughout their entire lives, they have had sort of this idea in their head be just really corrupted. And so a lot of times what happens is they don't really know who they are. So they wake up in the morning and basically what they do is, they grab their phone, right? And social media, their email, that basically tells them who they should be, who they are. They, go downstairs, they eat some kind of a breakfast. Maybe they don't really talk with their family. Maybe they do talk with their family. Again, their family is sort of reaffirming sort of like this default identity. And oftentimes what I've noticed is that people with social anxiety, they haven't actually sort of stopped or at a more not legitimate, but at a more long-term level to really choose who they want to be in every situation. And personally for me, when I started to realize that I kind of had social anxiety, this was one of the biggest things that I started working on of like, am I going to let my brain sort of take me through a series of steps and cycles to sort of get me to imagine that the rest of the world thinks that I'm shy or thinks that I'm not confident, which really has to do with like the past and who I was as a kid and any kind of like traumatic events. And so a lot of the times, if you don't choose who you are before you start the day, before you walk into a room, then what happens is your brain then goes into this sort of fight or flight state of mind, where basically what happens is your nervous system shifts from parasympathetic to sympathetic. And basically what happens is for some people, this looks like they start to sweat. This, for some people, looks like their throat clenches, it gets tight, they can't breathe. For some people, their mind goes blank. And like really what's happening is it's not just in your head, like literally your nervous system is shifting gears. And for a lot of people who don't know this, this happens every single day of their lives. And they just sort of show up to meetings, they show up to situations, they show up to rooms. And then all of a sudden, this cycle starts where they feel a lump in their throat, or maybe their leg starts to tap, or maybe their heartbeat starts to beat. And they walk away and they're like, like, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say this?
Wow.
Or why did I act like that?
And so this all okay. So first of all, you're referring, you're saying that this is something that people that have had long-term social anxiety have, but I don't know. I mean, this sounds like it can be for a lot of people that don't have identified social anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I'm not like a doctor or anything. So I can't like diagnose or
Sure,
say,
sure, sure.
anything like that. So again, people have listening to this, they have to kind of figure out what applies to them or not. But yeah, I mean, this oftentimes it happens a lot. And like, just, I'll tell you, for example, like, one time I was at like the grocery store and I was doing some shopping, and this was kind of early on in my social anxiety recovery. And I have my headphones and I'm like blasting full music. I'm paying attention to the music. Like I have no physical situational awareness whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, I sort of like very quickly glance up. And all of a sudden, I notice like there's a grocery store employee and he's like wearing the grocery store uniform, right? And he kind of like looks at me. And all of a sudden, like I just noticed, like, all of a sudden I just get really nervous. All of a sudden, I feel like this fight or flight, my heartbeat increase start to begin. And I walk away and I'm just like, yo, what just happened? And basically what I realized in that moment is that personally for me, and everyone has a different version of social anxiety, but personally for me, I developed this sense of social anxiety around people who are in uniforms for whatever reason,
Okay.
whether it was due to like me growing up in school, seeing certain people wearing uniforms and them yelling at me or intimidating at me, and so on and so forth. And so everyone has different layers of social anxiety. And there's like 4 different layers of social anxiety. I can go into them if you would like me to, but basically everyone's social anxiety monster is different. It may be triggered depending on different layers, different experiences in their life, but basically it is like this internal algorithm, so to speak, in your head that basically gets you to not be yourself and kind of takes your brain away and really hijacks your mind so you cannot be yourself.
And that's what I want to ask you about. So going back to that sale, let's put it back into the terms of a sales rep, a medical sales rep, and you're about to go into an office, an account, and you just go into the account, you meet the provider, and then you start sweating profusely, and you just start falling apart. You're saying that happens because you didn't take the time to identify who you were before you stepped into that account. Is that?
I mean, there could be many different reasons,
Okay.
I mean, one reason could be maybe, you didn't do your homework. So maybe you feel like you're not prepared. And then a lot of times too, there are these sort of what I call like magic tricks that your brain can play on you. Especially a lot of times people will have social anxiety. So for example, a very common magic trick that your brain plays is that no one else ever gets stressed or nervous or anxious except for you. So then basically you walk into the account, right? And then you think like, oh my God, this guy, like, what if he doesn't like me, or what if he doesn't like the product? And a lot of times we don't really imagine the other person. Yeah. Or if we do, it's sort of in a more negative way. When in reality, like for all you know, maybe that person is also anxious to meet you. Maybe they also have social anxiety, right? Another one too is having the mind reading bug. So basically what that means is that, people with, people who experience social anxiety, they'll basically look at someone based on their facial expressions or based on just their overall demeanor, their behavior, and they'll basically think that they can read their minds when that's probably wrong. I mean, it could be true.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be wrong, and so there's all, it's basically like, the way that I think about social anxiety is there is that identity piece. There is sort of these sort of hidden bugs that are in your brain that sort of get you to imagine certain things. And there's also like the biochemical piece too, of like, if you sort of have this underlying issue and you didn't really sleep well the night before, you've drinking like 6 cups of coffee and you haven't eaten breakfast, or maybe you ate like a really bad breakfast, then all of these things also begin to contribute towards your mental state. And I'm not saying like these things can cause social anxiety, But if it's already there, it makes it a lot worse. And so, yeah, there's definitely many different angles. But I think those are a few, if any of those sound interesting to you.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of different things. So I do want you to break down the 4 levels, but before that,
Okay.
I do want to understand what can someone do before going. What can someone that has this, and I want to say that I might have this, because the things that you're talking about, I've heard before from people that social anxiety wasn't even a part of the conversation as far as their training and what they wanted to accomplish, but they telltale signs of the things that you've described were there. So what can someone do? And think in terms of, again, that sales rep's going to an account, or that medical device sales rep that's in the OR. They're responsible for a lot. They got to kind of manage the room, take instruction from a surgeon, from a tech, and if something goes wrong, take the blame and still be able to manage the room. Speak to that. What can someone do to get in front of all those experiences and still hold their own and do what they got to do? So we left it there, a little bit of a cliffhanger. So make sure you tune in next week for part 2 with Mark Metry. This is going to be a 3-part series. You've just heard part 1. Next week is part 2, and then of course, finally, part 3. And what did we just talk about? We just talked about what sales reps can do to really get in front of any social anxiety they might be harboring, and whether it's budding social anxiety, something they've been normally dealing with, or something they could start to deal with because things aren't working out the way they want to. And he's going to tackle it in part 2, so make sure you come in and listen. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, I want to know more about what Mark Metry is doing, then of course, make sure you look at the show notes. You can look at that on iTunes, on Spotify, or you can go to our website, evolveyoursuccess.com, go to the podcast page, and just look up his episode. It'll be the latest episode. And he has books he's written. He's on YouTube with his TEDx's. He has a very, very significant following on LinkedIn. I believe he has over 100,000 followers. This guy's really making things happen. And I think it's because he's addressing something that's not often talked about, but yet a lot of people experience. So make sure you check him out. And of course, make sure you're here next week for part 2. Someone else that I want to mention, and you might have heard me mention him before, is Chris Larson. Chris Larson wrote a book called Next Level Income. And he's interesting because he was in the medical sales space and he was making $300,000 a year. And he walked away from all of it to throw himself full-time into his lifelong dream with real estate investing. Financial freedom was always a goal for Chris, and he found a way to create it. And all he wants to do is dedicate his life to helping other people do the same. Ultimately, what it did for him making that type of transition is allowed him to spend more time with his family and really buckle down and focus on his goals of creating financial freedom for other people. So if you'd like to learn more about his secrets and how he became financially independent and how you can become financially independent as well, then you got to get a copy of his book, Next Level Income. You can get a copy at nextlevelincome.com/book. And again, that's nextlevelincome.com/book. And what he's doing is he's truly helping people become financially independent. In his book, you're going to learn so much. I learned so much when I read it. And one of the things I love about it is it's such an easy read. I mean, I'm literally one of those simple weekend reads that's just packed full of information. You're going to walk away saying, wow, the things I didn't know. And everyone's on board. Doctors are on board. Medical sales executives are on board. Sales reps are on board. I am on board. And it's because, we see the value in what he's doing. And he's literally helping all of us become more financially free. And I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, the numbers are real. The investments are real. And when you see it actually work, when you see it actually happening, the dream of being financially free quickly becomes real. So, of course, why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? If you have money to invest and you want to put it into action, then you got to do it with Chris Larson. So, again, what we do here at Evolve Your Success. Me, Samuel, what our programs entail. We have a program that helps you get into medical sales. That's called the Medical Sales Career Builder. Those of you who have been listening, you've been hearing me talk about this. You've been hearing our guests. You've been saying, man, you know what? I think I should do that. Well, look, don't think about it anymore. If it's been on your mind for this long, schedule the time. Schedule the time so you can have a call with us. Take the action. Don't let anything get in your way. Take the action because your career is right around the corner. And the easy way to do that is just visit evolveyoursuccess.com, click on Attain Medical Sales Role, and follow the prompts. We have a very short application just to get a few tidbits of information about you and what you're really trying to do. And then you're going to have a nice call with us, and myself or one of our sales reps is going to talk to you about how our program can literally change your life. Another program that we have that I really want to talk about is our LinkedIn branding program. I think everyone's kind of seen it now. LinkedIn is no longer the I want to get a job site. It's the site for almost all types of professional interaction. Whether you're selling a product, whether you're trying to build a brand in your space as a thought leader, whether you're just trying to have a really extensive network that takes all these thought leaders within your space and utilize those relationships to be more effective in your own business, LinkedIn is the place to do it. But in order to truly make that happen, you gotta have a brand. You gotta have a presence there that helps people understand the value you bring to your space. And that is now what we are helping people do. So again, visit evolveyoursuccess.com, go to the LinkedIn branding tab, and take a look at our program. All you have to do is look on there, fill out a quick little snippet on your information for us to contact you, and let's have a conversation about how you can change your career trajectory, about how you can change your business, about how you can change your sales performance through this amazing social media platform. Again, we thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Medical Sales Podcast. We do nothing more than try to find more and more effective, innovative ways to provide value to you as the person trying to get into medical sales, you as the sales rep, and you as the sales leader. So check out those resources we just mentioned, and of course, make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.